On Sunday, the Muslim holy month of Ramadan came to an end, and London's Mayor Sadiq Khan shared a message highlighting the joy and togetherness of Eid al-Fitr. In his Eid message, Khan also said this.
This year, for many, the usual happiness we feel during Eid will be tempered by the appalling suffering and killing that continues in Sudan and Palestine. More than 50,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza as a result of Israel's ongoing military campaign, including more than 15,000 children. While in Sudan, tens of thousands have been killed and millions displaced by a devastating civil war now entering its third year.
Now, you're never going to guess, but some people weren't happy with Khan referencing the unimaginable atrocities the people of Palestine are being subjected to. The Israeli embassy in particular. A spokesperson for the embassy said this. The war is a result of the brutal and horrific attack by Hamas, a prescribed terror organization in the UK, which was imposed on Israel on 7th of October 2023. It's alarming that throughout the message, there is no mention of Hamas or any condemnation of terrorism and a call for the release of 59 hostages that are being held in horrific and inhumane conditions. You can't talk about genocide without condemning Hamas first. This is an example of a tactic known as the electric fence approach, where lobbying efforts on behalf of the State of Israel endeavor to make any criticism of Israel so costly and likely to incur so much hostility and backlash that people and organizations think twice about even doing it. It leads to hesitancy and tiptoeing around issues like Israeli war crimes in Gaza, Israeli apartheid, Israeli breaches of international law, all of them. The embassy statement continues. Ultimately, Hamas terrorists murdered people of all faiths and none with impunity on the 7th of October. On that day, among the many innocent men, women, and children murdered, Hamas also murdered over 20 Muslim Israelis and kidnapped an additional 6. Indeed, in recent days, Hamas has tortured and murdered many Gazans protesting against the terror group, including Uday al-Rabai. The values that Mr. Khan speaks of must not be applied selectively. Furthermore, the death toll Mr. Khan reports is taken from Hamas propaganda and thus not based on facts, nor do they differentiate between combatants and non-combatants. Even this week, Hamas again tampered with the death toll that they reported. Lastly, amid the alarming increase in anti-Semitic incidents in London and across the UK over the past 18 months, alongside the intimidating protests taking place outside places of worship, it is crucial that we all act with the utmost responsibility. Now, those figures relating to the death toll in Gaza come from Hamas's political wing, which governs Gaza. Israel is also continuing to impose a full ban on foreign journalists entering the territory, meaning independent verification is simply impossible. But what's more, back in July last year, British medical journal The Lancet estimated that the Gazan Ministry of Health's mortality figures were a dramatic understatement by 41%. The Spectator magazine also ran an open ed written by Jonathan Sacerdoti on Khan's temerity in mentioning the slaughter in Gaza. Here's a quote from the piece. Cloaked in the warm language of unity and peace, the Mayor of London delivered a politicised monologue that whitewashes terrorism, stokes division, and fundamentally misrepresents the moral landscape of the Israel-Palestine conflict. This is not the conduct of a responsible leader. It is the conduct of a man either willfully blind to barbarity or all too willing to exploit a religious holiday for ideological gain. Willfully blind to barbarity. Anyone who's immune to the horrific scenes of Palestinian children with their limbs blown off by Israeli bombs, or Palestinian fathers scraping the remains of their families into plastic bags, these are the people who are willfully blind to barbarity. In response to backlash from the Israeli embassy, Sadiq Khan did then condemn Hamas. A spokesperson from the mayor's office gave this statement to the Jewish News. The mayor has repeatedly conveyed his outrage at attacks by Hamas on Israel and has strongly condemned these acts of terrorism. He is deeply saddened by the loss of all lives and continues to support calls for a permanent ceasefire. Helena, this requirement that before you say anything about tens of thousands of Palestinians who have been killed by Israel in Gaza, you must condemn Hamas. You must go back 18 months to October the 7th, 2023, and condemn what happened there. As though you can never, for example, think about proportionality and think, okay, well, at some point I might have done that when things were, continue to do that when things were proportional, but things have become so disproportional now that continuing to return to it cancels out actually the extreme disparity in what's happened here. What do you make of these statements from the Israeli embassy?
I don't know about you, but I couldn't give less of a shit about what the Israeli embassy has to say about anything here, especially when Sadiq Khan is the mayor of London. He's not the mayor of Tel Aviv. It should be up to his own electorate and the people who he represents as to the positions that he holds and what he advocates for. It's up to him to decide what that is. And I don't care. I don't care what the Israeli embassy has to say about this, of course, given that in the UK, we fully support the Palestinians. When you look at every single poll is pro-Palestine. It shows sympathy with the Palestinians and shows solidarity with things like arms embargoes, sanctions, and the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, for example. So there is no need for us to take into account the opinions of the Israeli embassy on something that is, of course, none of their business. What our elected mayor in London decides to do or say when it comes to their opinions on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Regardless, though, what this all reminds me of, broadly, is the 2000s era Bush slogans of you're either with us or you're with the terrorists, right? Where all nuance gets removed, all context gets removed. As soon as you show solidarity with the people who some sides have decided are unworthy of that solidarity, you can get smeared. Because again, the thing as well, on top of all of this, is that all of us have done condemnations of Hamas. All of us have said that attacks on civilians are unwarranted. All of us have said that we don't want to see people killed and we want to see peace and we want to see justice. That's something that we've all said 1,000 times over and over and over again. No matter how many times we say it, it's never good enough. There should always be condemnations of Hamas before anything, any criticism of Israel as far as these people are concerned, whether it be the Israeli embassy or people from The Spectator, especially people from The Spectator who say incredible things such as not understanding the moral clarity or whatever it was of the Israel-Palestine conflict, when of course this is fundamental. It's fundamental to understand that the real basis of why we are here is because of Israel's occupation of Palestine. Once that ends, we can move on. But until that ends, these things will keep happening, especially when, of course, the provocations from the Israeli regime under Netanyahu continue to foment armed resistance through their attacks and in the West Bank and their continual desire to mow the lawn across all of the Palestinian territories as well. These are always going to be the material response, just in the same way that, for example, 9/11 was a material response to American imperialism and American belligerence within the Middle East and beyond. So trying to claim that you're somehow undermining or minimizing what happened on October 7th when you bring up Israel's much larger scale atrocities in Palestine is crazy to me. When you look at the numbers of people that have been killed, the percentages of women and children that have been killed, and the percentages of civilians that have been killed, Israel is on the worst side of all of these. When you think about the fact that even on October the 7th, a smaller percentage of civilians were killed than Israel have killed in their entirety of their military campaign in Gaza in percentage terms, not even taking account the nominal terms, to think this somehow doesn't show, it doesn't understand the moral situation of the Israel-Palestine conflict. It beggars belief to make such statements as that. But broadly, they can speak. It's all a smear campaign, as you say, as has been pointed out in your segment there. It's about making it difficult to be able to make a substantive critique of Israel without the electric fence coming up in front of you, that it undermines the reality of the position that you take, so that you have to have ideological lockstep rather than be able to say basic facts about what's happening here and to advocate a position which is pro-peace and is pro-justice.
I mean, one thing I should say is that this story was first published by The Times, I believe. So it's The Times that actually is, in fact, making news out of something that, as you say, is not news at all. That the Israeli embassy criticized Sadiq Khan's speech. Who cares what they think? But the British media really, really does. And I think what you say as well about October the 7th, the condemnation of Hamas is not just a condemnation of a group. It's, as it were, a constant reminder that that Israel would like one to think of the beginning of all of this as that date. So it's resetting all the time to this date, this event that happened, and therefore erasing the context in which it happened entirely. And it's also a way, of course, of constantly reinforcing the war on terror narrative that emerged in the early 2000s, carried on for a very long time. That it's a random attack by a kind of barbarous force that we're defending. It has nothing to do with history. It's really just, as it were, Arabs.